post-WOOK year. I have a project coming out in mid-June, and I wanted to talk about the inspiration behind it. And that is right here, my father. The project is called The Astronomer's Daughter. And considering that I am the daughter and he is the astronomer, I figured it would be a really good time to just kind of sit down and talk about why outer space is such a big pillar in the artwork that I do make. So, hi, Dad.
Hi.
Hey, it's good to see you. How are you?
Good to be here.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
All the way from DC. So I think I know you really well. So these questions might feel like things that obviously I already know, but
Right.
that's okay. So I think the first thing is you've worked at NASA for way longer than I've been alive. How long?
43 years.
43 years. What year was it when you got hired?
It was 81.
1981.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Reagan was president for 3 weeks.
Ronald Reagan was the president. That's crazy to think about. I mean, I know people talk about the Reagan administration. That's so not even my lifetime. So that's insane. Yeah. So I know you've always worked there as far as I've been alive, but what do you do specifically, day to day? What does it look like?
Yeah, I'm a software engineer, but also technical manager. I work mostly with the satellite data.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Satellite data, working with simulators, doing data analysis, test data generation, that sort of thing.
So and it's all for space-related stuff.
Yeah, it's referred to CCSDS.
What does that mean?
Yeah, the Consultant Committee for Space Data Systems.
Okay.
It's basically the easiest way that I describe it to people is to think of protocols for the internet like TCP/IP.
What does that mean?
TCP/IP is a way for ground-to-ground communication. It's how the internet works.
Okay.
So packets fly across the internet through routers from one location to another. Source destination is the way it's all done. But in the space industry, it's different because you're dealing with communication with satellites. So it's space to ground, ground to space, not just ground to ground.
So space to ground, ground to space.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much the way things flow there.
Right.
You know?
So you've worked at NASA for so
right.
What projects have you worked on?
Well, the memorable ones for me, I started with the Network Control Center, which basically was TDRS. It stands for Tracking Data Relay Satellite System. That was fun because it was an upgrade of the old Apollo ground stations where there were a lot of handovers from one location across the globe to others all the way around, and it just was resource heavy. So NASA was a big program to put into geosynchronous orbit, which basically means a satellite that's over the same spot of the Earth. The period of orbit is 1 day.
Yeah, we talked about this because I can't spell that word. I made a piece of art actually after we talked about it that's called geosynchronous, and I can never spell it. I have to spell check it every time.
Yeah.
But the way I understand it is it moves with Earth.
Right.
That's so cool.
For the people on the ground, it makes communicating with the satellite simple because it's kind of directly overhead.
Right.
JPSS, the project I'm on now, is a polar orbiter. So at about every 100 minutes, data is collected and dumped on the pole, North and South Pole, and the data is distributed through ground systems across the Earth.
And what is that data for?
Well, mostly for JPSS, the data is weather and earth science, that sort of thing. Ocean. We work closely with NOAA.
Yeah.
Yeah, NASA and NOAA joint. That's the joint satellite system. So yeah, all the good weather. We've shrunk the early warning is now 5 to 8 days. So we've improved that. 85% of all the weather data comes from our missions. I just heard the program manager say that just during a new all hands recently, and it was it's like wow, it's like that actually means something. 85%. So I mean, you're never going to get 100% of accuracy.
Right, of course.
But we do, I think, massive improvement of where we were back from 1981.
Well,
which I know.
What I remember when we were just in Arkansas for the eclipse, and I was like looking at like a weather,
Right.
like some sort of like weather page, and I remember you saying that you were like, thanks to me and my job, like we're the reason that this like works the way it does. It's just so funny.
I don't want to take exclusive credit
No,
for this
you're not
because there's a lot of people that are on this project
just
that
like
help.
your project being like the one that like runs the fact that, you know, like at first I remember when I was in New York, I was looking and I was like, oh shoot, we were going to get clouds.
Right.
And I couldn't like not go, you know, like there was a part of me, I don't know if I told you this, like there was a part of me that I was like, I might just skip it and just go to Vermont and just get good weather because I was already in New York. But I was like, I can't like not see my grandma and like not see my aunt and my parents. Like I feel like I have to go. Right. And then I'm glad I did because it ended up being a perfect clear day.
Yes, it was.
So it's like, even though the clouds, you know, it said it was going to be cloudy, you know, 5-6 days out, by the time it actually got to that time, it like ended up being super clear.
We were very fortunate for that. But yeah, I mean, you can't plan these. You can't make a total prediction it's going to be great, but I think the planning was good.
Yeah.
It came off good. Your uncle was happy for, you know, he thanked me for pulling off a good party. It's like, I didn't do that much, but we were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
and it was a lot of fun.
It was cool, yeah. And I think, like, I mean, just being able to, like, predict the weather and know where to go and everything, I think is, like, just a really awesome part. I mean, especially with the eclipse, like, I mean, you specifically that whole time were just, like, with your little glasses, like, all right, totality, getting closer. And it was just like and it was just so exciting, you know. And I think that just stuff like that, it's like a way for like you and I to like kind of merge over what we find is cool. But I think like, you know, you got hired at NASA like well before I was born. Right. So I just like don't really know how that happened. Because I remember my first like memories were like space flight centers and like, you know, astronaut ice cream and like, you know, things like that. But like, you know, there was quite a few years before that. So like, what did that look like?
Well, for me, my love of astronomy started very young. I was always fascinated with the planets.
Well, what did you like
solar
first?
System.
The computers or the space? What came first? Okay,
yeah,
space.
Definitely. So astronomy, solar systems. I would find myself like in elementary school doing diagrams of the sun and where Mercury was and Venus and Earth and Mars, and it had it all kind of like lined up. Just the solar system has always been fascinating for me. So I study the planets. I'd make charts of the details. I actually eventually wrote some code in BASIC that an astronomer who was actually using a telescope to know where to look for things, just, you know, to see where Venus would be at a given time,
right,
or date, and so on. And my model was actually pretty accurate, all things considered, for the time. But I mean, right now, JPL, you know, does a great job of getting that down to exact. So I use things like Heavens Above. But
that's what I use.
That's
what I use for this entire project. Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah, but
Heavens Above is great, and it's the kind of thing where I used old tools on a Macintosh. Voyager 2 was a program that I completely fell in love with, and was able to. I mean, because of the early love I had for the solar system, to use a program like that to understand how the eclipse work and just, you know, push things in time to match it when it actually gets there. It's like it's a perfect match.
Right.
So that I always loved celestial mechanics, and that's
going to become a name for a piece. Celestial mechanics, because to me that's such a juxtaposition, right?
Right.
Because to me it's like celestial is like this big, like, you know, aformous thing, and like mechanics is so like immutable.
Yeah, orbital elements, things like
that's another one.
Yeah,
done. Thanks.
Orbital elements.
2 piece names now. Thanks.
Yeah, and each of those, I won't go into all the details because it'd take me a few minutes to remember all that, and I don't want to screw that up. But it suffice to say, the orbital elements that you use to get celestial mechanic models developed are all there. So yeah. But I loved all that. That was that part of astronomy and learning about, you know, other stars. And I never forget. We in the 6th grade, but there was an astronomer came talk to the class. I was really excited about this, and we actually talked about exoplanets.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and exoplanets are planets that actually revolve around other stars, right?
Yeah.
And back then, it was like 1969.
Mm-hmm.
There were exactly 2, and it was so neat to know that that there were 2. Well, today there's 5,000, and NASA has TESS. I forget exactly what that acronym stands for, but I was doing Maryland Day,
Mm-hmm.
and right next to the JPSS table was the tests, and it was so cool to hear about how
Wait, do you
far.
still volunteer at Maryland Day?
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
2 years in a
Wow.
row.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it was JPS.
That's
Well,
so
the
funny.
JPSS table was so full, I ended up filling in with Landsat. They
Yeah.
were happy with that.
That was like one of
And
my favorite things to do as a kid. It was like
to
Maryland Day.
Maryland Day.
That's
Well,
so
you wanted
funny.
we wanted to go get the ice cream. They had homemade
Yeah,
ice.
the
Wasn't that cool?
nitrogen ice cream.
Yeah, yeah. And they
So that's cool.
yeah, Maryland Days where they open up the campus of the University of Maryland, and all the departments go out and put tables up, and you just talk to them about what they're
Everything.
doing.
Yeah, no. but
Chemistry people are out there,
I
the
just
astronomy people, the computer people.
It's just so much. It's so cool that
Ag.
like you're still involved in that. And I just
Oh,
think
yeah.
like, I mean, when it comes to like space, I think like you and I have had like a lot of like offline conversations obviously about space, and I just think the coolest thing is just how big it is and how expansive it is. And I know for some people that scares them. You know, it's like some people like I personally, if I had the option, well, I'd probably choose neither, but like if I had the option of like being in a submarine, controlled environment, like everything is fine.
Right.
I'm with people who I trust who could like get me back to the surface safely, not that like weird little pod thing that went missing a few years ago. Not like that, but like a real thing. I'd rather go personally like deep sea versus like deep space. But like, what would you do?
For space,
If you could go deep into the ocean or go deep into space?
I'd rather go into space than that. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong. As a kid, I loved Jacques Cousteau and all his. It was a regular show that was on like Sunday night. It was fascinating, everything he was doing. So it's not like I didn't enjoy looking at deep space. The bath escapes and the fish down there are totally
Yeah.
different. So
Oh, they're so cool.
So yeah, I mean,
fascinated.
I mean, I actually before the solar system, I was a herpetologist, snakes and turtles and fish.
Oh my God, right.
All
I
that.
forgot
I
about
mean,
that.
yeah, that was my first love, salamanders and stuff like that. So
Creek stories
so,
when you lived in
yeah,
where was
I mean,
it, Kansas?
well, it actually started in Garmisch.
Really?
Yeah, the salamander pond that I visited as a kid.
Oh wait, we haven't gotten into like why you moved around so much.
I'm a military brat.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So my grandfather was in the military, so he moved around all over. So there's like so many different like ecosystems that come into play.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember you telling me about like Fort Leavenworth in Kansas.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like hanging out by like the stream, and then like I mean I don't know. I think things like that are cool. Like we see a lot of lizards here.
Yeah,
They're pretty cool looking.
I still like seeing them. I mean, back then I thought I was going to have my own like zoo. You know, I'd catch them and bring them. It was my sisters, my two older sisters. Like, I caught this salamander. Sure, you did. So it's like I had to bring them home for like proof. Right? and that was kind of the thing. And then they got to the point where I had started bringing so many animals home, they would have to let them go, and it was always like it got away.
Oh,
They were letting them go. So, but yeah, I mean, I was pretty young, and
Yeah.
being a zookeeper really wasn't in my future, you know.
Yeah. So like when you got to the point where you had access to a computer, like how old were you? Because I've always known access to a computer, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So-
Yeah. A lot of people take it for granted that the computers were everywhere. That wasn't the case. I mean, I literally, I was fortunate to have lived at West Point, New York, as a junior high school kid, and I got access to the mainframe there at West Point,
Right.
and sat down with a friend of mine and did rudimentary basic programming, and that was it kind of planted a seed. I didn't do much with it at West Point, but then I moved to Frankfurt, Germany,
Yeah.
and went to Frankfurt American High. There I became an expert in basic. That's when I got hooked. I felt powerful learning how to program. I did. It was like, that was my superpower.
You could like make things happen.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I wrote a big letters program that literally, you would type in a phrase and on a yellow paper,
Yeah.
teletype paper, it would print out the letter. Like if you did something like Celtics, if you were a Celtics fan from
Yeah.
Boston, for example, you type in Celtics, it would print out a large letter CETL, and the teachers were, can you do this for me? So that was when I had the teachers asking me to produce big letter samples for their whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
That made me feel good, and it was good.
So do you think like growing up or like going to school like on an army base in middle school and then like going to an American high school that was like obviously just for like military kids.
Yeah.
Do you think like you had access to computers like earlier than some people did, or like
Yeah, well, it turned out the combination of West Point and Frankfurt. It turned out that yes, there was a big mainframe in at West Point, and then the mini computer. It was an Interdata 716.
what does mini mean? in
Mini,
this
mini. Yeah, that's
circumstance?
no, that's a. Oh, back then, they were basically mainframe computers, IBMs and stuff like that. Big IBM 360, 370, UNIVAC 1100 series, which I used at University of Maryland. Controlled data. I mean, I can go on and on. There were mainframes were pretty much what you had, and back then, you would get time. You would pay. You would literally pay for time, and
Like a laundromat.
well, you would have a terminal, you'd have a telephone, and a modem. Right?
Okay.
So as long as you had a terminal, a telephone, and the modem communicated between the terminal and the telephone, and then the telephone line connected to a mainframe computer, and you paid for access to get to slices of time and resources. So that's
Right.
how it was all done. Companies like I work for, Computer Science Corporation, that was part of their business unit, just owning these mainframe computers and leasing time to individual organizations.
Cool.
So, but a mini computer was more of a localized machine that was smaller, a lot smaller than a mainframe, like a large refrigerator, but it still allowed multiple terminals to communicate with. We had like 10 different teletypes communicating to the mini computer, and then we have BASIC running on each of those, and each student can go and do their work. That's how that worked out, and eventually home computers came around,
Right.
and that was in the mid '70s. And
Really? Did you have one in the
I
70s?
was one of the first. When I started at the University of Maryland, I opted not to get a car. They were offering me to get
No
a car.
way.
My stepfather and mom were getting married, and they asked me about a car, and I said, I'll take public transportation, get me a computer.
Seriously.
That's exactly how it
And
worked.
then you got one.
I got one,
Oh my God.
and yeah, it was, back then everything was in kit form.
Yeah, right. So you had
And-
to build it yourself.
No, I didn't. I trusted the people that were, sold it to me. They knew what they were going. They charged 40%
Right.
on top of what the
You
price
can
was.
still do that at like a micro center.
Yeah, you can still build your own, but why? I mean, unless you're really into the component level of
Oh,
doing stuff. So,
So many
right now,
artists are into it. It's so fun.
now it's so micro miniature. You'd be
Yeah.
hard pressed to actually build your own. Back then,
Well, I think a lot of artists build their own PCs. Like I built my own PC. Like I had some help for sure, but I definitely.
I think you're missing the point. I'm talking about boards that are just
Oh.
boards, and you
Oh.
put the individual components
No.
on a single side.
No.
I mean, we're
I'm
talking
saying-
ancient history now.
No,
I
I'm
mean-
talking people get they get a motherboard, they
Right,
put their
right.
own pieces
Yes,
into
I
it.
still do that too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like more modular, less like you know,
And
steampunk.
the
Yeah.
modular's the right word.
Yeah.
That happened probably in the 90s when they started doing both sides and surface mount. Back in the old days, there was a definite front side,
Yeah,
and there was the back side you soldered,
yeah.
and that was it.
Did you build my first PC?
the first PC that
He
you
still has it, by the way.
Yeah, what was that the Mac that you were using?
No,
or-
no. The like tower that I had.
Yeah, put it together. Yeah,
put it together?
yeah. I bought the tower, I bought the motherboard, and
I remember I think it was the memory was
Uh-huh.
one of my Christmas presents growing up.
yeah, you got extended.
Like that
memory.
was the Christmas
Yeah.
present. It was like in my stocking. It was like literally like a memory card. It was pretty big at the time, and it was just
Right.
like it looked like a bookmark. And I was like, "What is this?" And he was like, "It's for your computer." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay."
It extended the memory. I think we doubled it to I forget exactly.
Which is so
what it
funny
was.
because now it's like I have 2 terabytes in my tower, and like
Right.
it's almost like not even enough. I need like more.
Really? Wow, you're doing okay.
Well, because every piece that I make, like if I make it at full size, is about like it can be like about like 3 or 4 gigs.
Okay.
And it's like if I'm making like 100, 200 pieces a
Right,
year,
right,
it's
right.
like that adds up, And I think
Gotcha.
I probably have like 1 terabyte left of storage.
Gotcha.
But I just never want my computer to run slow. That's like my
Okay.
thing. I haven't had any problems though. I'm really happy about that.
So let me ask you a question though.
Yeah.
Cloud computing? No, I mean.
I use the cloud. I use Dropbox and I use like Creative Cloud for some stuff just to like have it just in
Alright.
case. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I typically put everything on my like hard drive.
Okay.
I like to have it on the hard
I
drive.
don't blame you for that. I know a lot of people that are like big on cloud.
The cloud's
I'm
fine.
Not, I mean, I like cloud for certain applications,
Yeah.
but if it's like you own this, right? I don't. You don't necessarily want to.
That's so funny. It's like the whole crypto conversation, right?
Uh-huh.
Of like, yeah, you can buy Bitcoin on PayPal, but like you don't really truly own it unless you have the keys, right?
Yeah.
And like we were talking about that earlier. It's
Right.
just like, having having a custodian wallet and having
Uh-huh.
like full custody of your crypto
Right.
makes it different for someone who's just like, I invested all my money on FTX and then like, Sam Bankman-Fried like ends up going to jail, FTX goes bankrupt, and then all their money is gone. Like that happened to some of my friends. And it's just like, it's the same kind of thing. That's how I kind of view the hard drive is like, if I have a hard drive, I know where that hard drive is. You know what I mean? I know where it is in my computer. I put it in myself. Like I know how to get it out. I also have like a 4 terabyte like SSD that I might end up just like using instead of getting like a new thing for the internal. But yeah, I think like, I wouldn't have known how to do any of this stuff if it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
Like it's just really like, like I just feel,
yeah.
well, it's just so funny because I feel like, from such a young age, you dragged me to like every single space flight center. And I remember like, it was fun. I'm not trying to say I reluctantly went. Like I enjoyed it.
We haven't been to Marshall.
Where's Marshall?
In Huntsville, Alabama.
No, we have not.
Yeah, that's on the bucket list. You want to come with?
When is it?
Whenever we'll set up a time. It's like there's no specific.
I just think like for me
we
though.
Go to Johnson next month too.
For me though, it's like. Is Johnson Houston?
Johnson Houston.
We did that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being there, and it was
you
like,
got mad
Houston, I hated it. I didn't want to be there.
No, she literally says, "Dad, you're taking me to work. Why did you take me to work?" She confused Goddard with Johnson.
Well, to me, it was all NASA. Like I didn't care. You know what I mean?
It was a little unnerving at the time, but looking back in hindsight, it was so cute. Oh, you were. Well, wait a minute.
5, 6?
Yeah, about 5.
No, but that's the thing is like I feel like from such a young age, like you like really like brought me to all these places, and obviously as a kid, I like at times at Johnson did not appreciate it as much. But it's like I'm grateful for that because it's cool, and I've got to see these like cool places.
Yeah.
From what I remember, you got to see like the control room, right? Like that's a part of Johnson.
Yeah, that's the Apollo 11 stuff. They kept it
Houston,
in the same way. Yeah,
it's so cool.
Yeah, they kept that the same way.
Yeah.
We also went to Kennedy Space Center.
Of course.
That was in 2003.
Yeah.
So you remember that, right?
I do remember
Orlando?
that. Yeah. No, but I feel like that kind of stuff is like, I feel like that had a bigger impact on me than I even thought that it did, to be honest, just because it's like, I'm realizing like the longer that I've been an artist and the more that I've just kind of like made work that like how subconscious the work that I make really is. And just like I look at it later and I'm like, oh my God, like this explains a lot of the ways that I've been feeling. And I feel like the art that I'm making, it ties so much of my like emotions and memories together.
Right.
And it's just like there are things in my subconscious that I've buried like come up and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is like some deep space stuff. Like this is actually really cool. Yeah. And I just feel like that all happened pretty much because you dragged me to those places. But like I think the question
somewhat
is like,
reluctantly at times.
At times reluctantly for sure. But I feel like the question is like, did you ever anticipate like at Johnson when I was like screaming and having a fit, did you ever anticipate like this becoming such a big part of my life?
No. I didn't think you'd become an artist. I know you loved art as a child.
Yeah, it was really creative.
Always
Shout out to my mom for that. She was always really pushing creativity on me.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I think she's as much,
She's super creative.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. So I think it's a fusing of, I brought you into the environment of space and her creative aspect meld, and it's kind of a good marriage there, mixture to, produce all the great stuff you're doing as post-WOOK.
Yeah, it's so funny because I remember, going to school and like going into college, I really wanted to be a lawyer. Like that was always, that's literally why I moved out here. It's just like I wanted to get a degree in political science. And I was like, I'm not stopping here. And I wanted to get some experience in the workforce. And then even after I like left the campaign that I was on, I was like, let me see what entertainment's like. Let me see what that is. And let me see if entertainment law would be a thing for me, which is the whole reason I moved to Los Angeles. And it ended up just like not needing to happen. But it's just so funny because never in a million years did I think that my life would look this way. You know what I mean? And like, I never, you just never know like the impact something will have on you, I think. But yeah, it's so funny because it's just like, I don't know. I just sometimes think about the fact that I'm like, how did I get here? You know what I mean? Like, it's so interesting. I mean, it makes sense in retrospect, but it's just like so funny.
The art's only part of it, though. I think
that's true.
I think that when you were American, you actually learned a lot about business too, and interacting with people.
I learned a lot about
networking and so on.
I learned a lot about networking, but not with the right people. I learned a lot from business just by like working with people and like like watching them and kind of like learning about their mistakes and like making my own. I feel like I learned a lot of that out here.
Well, you had a lot. You had several jobs when you were working.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm just like a workaholic though.
Right,
That had nothing to do with like business acumen. Like, I just love working.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I believe everyone in the world has like a dog breed that like fits them, like their personality.
Right.
And I just truly believe that I am like a German Shepherd. I am like, or maybe not a German Shepherd, maybe more like an actual shepherd dog, like the kind that like an Australian shepherd. Like I'm the kind of dog that like I need to be like working. I need to be doing something
dog. That's
all
actually,
the
do you
time.
know there's a classification?
Working dog. Oh yeah, that's me. Like I genuinely feel like I'm the kind of person that like I can sit still and like do quite literally absolutely nothing for about a minute and a half if I'm not trying.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, what am I doing now? You know, and it's just like I can like be present in the moment. I'm not like saying I'm incapable of that, but it's just like I love being in motion. And I just feel like one of the things that I don't know. I think when I was in school, that was really like the drive. I just loved being in motion. I was like, why would I sit here and watch Netflix when I can hang out with people I like at a store and get paid for it?
Right.
Yeah. That was my thought.
Yeah, HTO. I remember that.
Yeah, I worked at a campaign store in college. It was fun. We have a lot of outdoor gear because of that, so it was great. But yeah, no, I just feel like, you know, I never thought that my life would kind of like take this kind of a turn. Because it's funny, because for me, I mean, I don't even know if you know the story. Like when I was working on that campaign, like I just needed a creative outlet. I needed to do something that just wasn't what I was doing. Because I just realized, I mean, throughout my whole life, I had creativity in before high school, in college, I just had it. I had something to do that was creative. And then when I got out of school, it was like the most creative thing I could do was like plate my lunch in a way that like felt aesthetically pleasing. You know, I just didn't have creativity.
Right.
I didn't have a means to dress myself in a way that was fashionable, right? I didn't have the money for it, which is fine. It's great. It drove me to make art, but it's just like I put myself in a situation, I feel like, where I just like hit this breaking point. And I call it my like glow stick moment. Once you break a glow stick, there's no unbreaking it. You know what I mean? There's no unbreaking something once it's happened. Like a chemical reaction happened to me where I was like, I need to do something differently. And I feel like that happened because of that campaign. Honestly, like I don't think I ever would have found myself in a place where like I could have like gotten out of that if I didn't like put myself in a pressure cooker. Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's like kind of where that came from, but I just never thought it would get to this point.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's great. This is a great journey you're on, you know?
No, it's crazy. But I think like, I mean, when it comes to like where we're at now, like what I think is cool is like, I remember calling you at the very beginning of this project.
Right.
Probably in like January. I called you and I was like, I want to do something cool. I want to do it that's like time-based. I want to do something that like uses satellite data.
Right.
What do I do? And I just asked you. I was like, how do I find satellite data? How do I find like something that will show me what space looked like from Earth on a specific day in retrospect? Like I need a retrospective, right? And you were like, you gave me a whole bunch of examples, and I think it was like photos, and I think it was one of them was like the JPL thing, and I was like, I looked at it and I was like, this is kind of cool, but I think the thing that really got me was the Heavens Above. Like that once I looked at Heavens Above, I mean, I've spent probably like 50 hours on that website. Like I spent so much time researching just like what I needed to find for this specific project, and Heavens Above ended up being that. But it's just so funny because it's like, I don't know, like when I called you about that, like what were your thoughts? I guess.
Well,
do you remember that conversation?
It made me think of several things. I mean, Heavens Above I've used for a while. It's basically an outgrowth of, you know, we're talking about loving the solar system.
Yeah.
You know, it's really kind of like the.
Wait, do you have a favorite planet?
Earth.
Okay, other than Earth.
Saturn.
Okay, same. I love that. We have the same favorite planet.
Literally the same too.
Yeah, I love Saturn.
That's
it's my favorite.
Yeah, Saturn's come on.
It's just
the
beautiful.
rings are incredible, and was it the Cassini mission?
Oh yeah,
a great mission.
I mean, Jupiter is like a close second though, considering
I mean, all the gas giants are.
It's just so beautiful.
Mars too, though, because we land on it.
We land on Mars, but like Mars, I think is so. To me, I think Mars is like, it's interesting, but I think the most interesting thing about Mars is the fact that like the sunset is blue. I'm like, yay, cool, like great, you know, but I don't know. People overhype Mars in my opinion.
Well,
that's my hot take.
Well, I think they're overhyping it because they think that we're going to get there and put foot on it soon.
Yeah, they do.
But that's not going to happen soon. But there is, I will say that there's, I won't go into the details and the naming because I can't literally remember, but I recall at the 50th anniversary of the Apollo, I volunteered on the mall. NASA employees were asked if they want to volunteer. I said, sure, why not? People from HQ reached out to Goddard, and we went down there, and I did the tattoo tent. It was a lot of fun. Anyway,
awesome.
I ran into a guy from JPL, and I asked him about the Mars sample return mission, right? and it turns out to be 3, where they actually load up, send a probe, load up like containers.
Yeah.
Send another one to go grab the container, bring it up to an orbiter, and then a third mission comes and grabs that and brings it back. Well, we got 1 done, and we're waiting for 2 and 3. So the sample return
Have you heard
is a big deal.
Have you heard the story that apparently, I don't remember which satellite it was.
Uh-huh.
It might make me cry because it's so sad. It's just like this satellite like saying itself happy birthday and then died. Did you hear about this?
I hadn't heard the happy birthday part,
It
but I
sang
know
itself
several
happy
satellites.
birthday and then it just died.
Really?
Yeah. It was like happy birthday and then it just like stopped recording everything. Like no more inputs to Earth ever again. Because it had expired. It was like time. You know what I mean?
See.
So it's like they had it in orbit or they had it on like Mars. I think it was the rover.
Oh.
It was rover, and it like the first one, and it had like an expiration date of like how long they wanted it there, and they'd
Okay.
put the rover 2 on Mars, and then like rover 1 saying itself happy birthday, and then it just like
I
stopped
see.
working.
Yeah. Okay.
And that
No,
like
I have
goes
to-
around the internet sometimes, and people
was
just
it,
like
well, there was
cry.
was it Viking or was it Spirit and
I don't
Opportunity?
remember.
Okay, I
It's
can look
just
them up.
so funny that it did that. I'm just
Wa-
like,
was it-
what?
It probably was Void. It might have been Viking, one of the early Vikings. It sounds like something during the Carl Sagan era, you know,
Maybe,
during
yeah.
the Voyager thing. I could be wrong. It could be Spirit and Opportunity too. But I think by then, those landers, basically, actually rovers,
Yeah.
they're going to use them as much as they can, and hopefully, you know, they would never want it to actually die. They would keep trying. Then eventually, it's like we've tried and it's not there, and
Right.
it's not singing, it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
So if there's one that actually expired, it probably was the very first.
I think it was like some planned obsolescence.
Yeah. Okay. So
You know what
I
I
would
mean?
think I think that's probably Viking.
It might have
And
been Viking.
I
Maybe
should-
it was
I'm surprised I don't know that.
Challenger coming to mind.
No, that was Challenger was the name of the spacecraft.
No.
Yeah, that was a sad-
Challenger was the poster that I had in my room. Do you remember
Uh-huh.
that as a kid?
Was it a shuttle?
It was a shuttle, and I had it in my room. It was like during a launch, and I remember I had like a poster of it that you got
Okay.
me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You remember- was it Challenger?
Challenger, Columbia, Enterprise?
I don't know. It was one of them.
Discovery?
It was
I
like
mean,
the
Atlantis?
quintessential, like, you know,
Yeah,
spaceship.
there were 5, and you know they lasted their 30 years as planned. And
Yeah.
I agree with Obama.
No,
they
it wasn't.
canceled the
It wasn't
mission.
a satellite. It was like a human craft. It was like a space. It was like a space.
But
launch.
was it a shuttle or was it like a Saturn 5? I don't remember.
Oh my god! Yeah, I very
Unfortunately-
vividly remember
Yeah.
having like a satellite, or it wasn't a satellite. It was a spacecraft.
rocket.
It was a rocket.
It was a rocket.
and it was launching, and it was in my room as a kid,
Oh.
or maybe it was framed or something.
Well, there was one where it shows the shuttle on the launch pad
That's
and the
probably what it
moon
was.
in the background.
That's what it was.
That's the
Yes,
one.
yes.
Oh,
What was
okay.
that?
We still have that. I believe that is. I believe it's Columbia on the launch pad. It's a famous photo.
Yeah, it's a super famous photo, but I
Yeah.
remember looking at that before I could fucking read.
Yeah.
Like that's like if people are like, "Why do you like space so much?" It's like literally I'm looking at images of space from
You know,
like,
your Aunt
before I
Linda
could
gave
read.
me that.
Did she?
Yeah,
That's funny.
She really did, and it's like,
I love that.
yeah, I didn't buy it for myself. She bought it and gave
I
it
did
to
not
me.
know that.
Yeah, and I still have it.
That's so cool. Where
Yeah.
is it? Is it downstairs now?
It's down in the basement.
That's so funny.
Yeah. It's
No,
down
I
near
remember
it's near
that.
your post-book art. You know,
Yeah.
You have it nearby. That,
Yeah, I remember that being like such a big thing for me, and just like seeing so much space stuff.
It was
So-
such a classic because it was a nighttime launch. They had all
Yeah.
the lights on it, and then the photograph. It for all practical purposes went viral. Sold. There's a lot of them out there. I
Yeah.
probably have 2 copies of it. You know, it's one of those kinds of things.
but okay, like going back to like that conversation we had about like the satellite data, like
Right.
did you think it would like what did you think about when I like called?
Oh,
it?
when you called, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Alpha Centauri one. Remember that?
Yes.
That I think
Shout out
was-
ACK.
that that predated that, right?
It
I
did.
think-
So that was
there
like, so it's funny because like I feel like this has been like an ongoing conversation with us because at first it was that one, and I don't know if you know the full story of that. So there's this artist named Alpha Centauri Kid, and
right.
he's
Yeah,
like,
you told me. You told
and
me about
he
him. Yeah.
and he specifically asked me, he was like, if you make a piece of art with Alpha Centauri in it, I will
Right.
buy it. And I was
Right,
like,
right.
okay. And then I made it, and I remember telling him, I was like, yeah, like, you know, I made this because my dad works at NASA, and
Right.
it was this whole thing. And he was like, oh my God, I have 3 daughters. Like, this makes it even cooler for me because
Right.
it's like I want to have this experience with my kids one day too.
Right.
And it's so funny. I've like met his daughters now, and like
Cool.
the oldest one, she's really witty. It's really cool, but it's funny because it's like that just made it mean so much more to him. And then
Right.
there was that other project. Do you remember why I asked you? I was just like,
Oh.
tell me like cool things about space. And I like made pieces, and it was like you, and then I talked to a geologist, and I talked to marine biologist.
Yes. Okay.
So there was that one. I feel like we've kind of been doing this. And then this
Right.
one is different though, because this one is like, it's less about like cool stuff and more about like, using specific dates and data.
Dates,
But like,
right.
yeah, I feel like we have been having this conversation for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
I my first thought was, share heavens above with you and get
Of
you
course.
going with that.
Yeah.
There was NASA, and I have to send you this. This is something that you don't have yet that can kind of follow up with this,
Okay.
right? And it might go to the future. A mission, a sun observing SOHO, SOHO.
Okay.
They did a movie, and what's incredible about SOHO, it's a Earth orbiter that looks at the sun, and it blocks out the sun in a way that the eclipse did for us, and it shows in the background all the planets moving.
Yeah, you have to send me that. That's so cool.
And it is so cool because what I was able to do was found all the cool things where like Venus comes in and comes around, and Mercury does the same thing, and Mars slides backwards. There's a certain pattern of the way the planets move as Soho's watching it, that they do snapshots on dates like you're talking about. Those dates then match up to what's in heavens above. I've got them all there. I have to send you this data.
No, that's so cool. Because I feel like the things that I realized just like doing the research for this is just like, I mean, first, just how frequently like Venus and Mercury just appear near Earth. Just because they're close, it's they're closer planets. Obviously, it was cool when Saturn appeared.
Right.
Like that, those are like always the fun like
Right.
planets. So like I like honored that in this project by like adding them in,
Uh-huh.
like pretty small, just so they're like they're
Yeah.
accessories in the piece, but it's like you can see like, oh, Saturn was close this day, or Mercury was close this day, or whatever it is. And it's just like Mercury and Venus obviously show up the most.
Right.
Jupiter shows up probably the least because it's the furthest away.
Right.
But it's just really cool, and just like knowing that like at all times, doesn't matter what time of day it is, doesn't matter where and when, it's just like something is going on in space. And It's just really awesome.
Yeah, it's phenomena they call it, but we know it's not overly phenomena because we have it charted down with the celestial mechanic models and stuff like that.
Yeah, that word celestial mechanics is so perfect.
Oh yeah, it's
I love that.
fascinating. Yeah.
No, it is. And I just think like when it comes to just like what I was doing and what I find like interesting in this is just like, I really wanted to find a way to incorporate data because I love data. I feel like that's something, even from when I was like working in politics and like doing political science, just like I love data. I mean, there's a lot of research you have to do with like with political research. I mean, it's just like huge. It's
Sure.
When you're writing a little off topic, but when you're writing like a paper about some sort of topic in history and in politics, you have to look at the history of what happened to be able to write an opinion on it.
Yeah.
And I just think like I fell in love with that process. Like it was just really big for me. And it's just like, I feel like I've kind of carried that into my life where it's like, I am very passionate about the fact that like you need to know something if you want to have an opinion on it.
Right.
So like I just do a lot of research on stuff.
Right.
And I just feel like when it comes to this, I wanted to like combine my love for data and for dates and just like history. Like I love that stuff.
Right.
And then also for art and space. Because to me, it's like, those are all things that I find really interesting. It was like, okay, how do I like put this together in a way that makes sense?
Right.
And I think that what was cool, and we learned today what SATs were, just fun fact.
Yeah.
So I think like what's cool about this is I initially had this idea intact, right? And I was like, okay, this is a dope idea. And then what happened was like I had this idea and I was like kind of working out how I wanted to like bring it to life, and I was talking to you about it.
Right.
And then really what happened was I started talking to people who knew a lot more about like Bitcoin and ordinals than I do. And they started talking about sats, and I was like, what? Okay, sats, interesting, dates. And then I started talking to a sat hunter, and he got really specific about like the dates and everything. And I was like, I'm thinking this could be cool. And then by the time I got to him, he was like, I know everything you need to know. Right. And then he was the one that kind of convinced me like these dates could be like really dope to use for specific situations. Because my idea initially was like, go find a needle in a haystack, go find me all the sats that I need, instead of working backwards, right? So like, just in short, what a lot of people do, like artists, when they figure out that you can use sats for artwork, they're like, I want these specific dates, and these dates have to be in here.
Right.
But it's like, that doesn't really work because you're, again, finding a needle in a haystack.
Right.
But with what I did, I actually got to like use the data further, because it was like, let me find a bunch of dates that are like a wish list. And I remember calling you about this, and I was like, tell me cool days from space.
Yeah, right, yeah. I do remember
And what was that thing, the space object? That looked like a cigar?
Oh yeah.
What is it called?
Oh, it's
Unamonima
no,
or
it's
something?
yeah. I don't want to even try to pronounce it on a camera, but
Oh my
it's dubbed U1, and
Yeah.
it's a cigar shaped thing that came in through with a real hyperbolic orbit,
Yeah.
meaning that it came in such a way and it's leaving the solar system.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating thing in astronomy. I know people that are, I don't know specifically, but I know that people are getting their PhDs still studying this thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I know. And
So that was one of the things on the wish list.
Right,
You
right.
know, and I like wanted to find that date. I didn't find it, unfortunately. But it's like, that's the thing is like,
yeah,
I
there's
needed.
that's the thing about that object. It's
Yeah.
such a the closest thing to do is find out when it was closest to the sun. Like that's the perihelion
Right.
point. And on that day, that's specific.
That's the date I found.
Right.
And then I couldn't find that date. I couldn't find a sat for that date. So that's the thing is like finding sats. It's like a needle in a haystack.
Oh, I
so
see.
I needed 100 dates, and I found I found a list of like a wish list of 400. I found a list of 400 to choose from, and then I ended up like finding 100 of those 400, which was great.
Okay.
And it was awesome when I found one that was like a lunar eclipse. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool! Like this is exactly what I need, you know?
Right, right.
And it's just like that ended up being like really dope. But like the problem became very quickly that like I was trying to find the needle in the haystack, and then I talked to the sat hunter, and he was like, maybe you find the hay in the needle stack, right? Or whatever. He was like, why don't you just use hay instead of trying to find needles, right?
Right, right.
And it made it a little bit easier. So instead of like trying to find like the coolest dates, it was like, why don't I show you how cool space is every single day?
Right.
With a lot of really cool days that are notable in it, but there are days in here that like maybe it's just like there's a new moon.
Yeah.
Awesome, you
Right,
know?
right, sure.
And that's just cool too, because it's like a new moon is a day you can typically see better visibility of planets.
Right.
You know, so it's like every day is going to be cool. So I just think, I don't know, when I like thought about this and just putting together all the research, it was interesting. And I think like, I mean, Heavens Above changed the game for me.
Okay.
Oh my God, I spent so much time on there.
I'll tell you, tying Heavens Above to the Soho.
Oh, I have to look at that.
Yeah. And that video that I was able to get from NASA, it was public domain. I mean, I serendipitously found this thing, which I just totally fell in love with. That's been during COVID. The movie was, there's more to it now. Because where it stopped, I think it was like 2021 maybe. So there's more to it now. So yeah,
I do remember that being. I think I looked at it actually, the Soho thing.
Did I? Did I send?
I think you did send it.
I may have sent. Yeah. Okay,
but for some reason,
good.
it like didn't hit what I needed for like
see.
information. Because I
Gotcha.
think it was something where you just kind of like, it's more like a world building kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I took snapshots of the Soho where I thought it was a great lineup of where there were a lot of planets in the same line.
Right.
And that in a position for celestial mechanics.
I got to use this in this project. I
Yeah.
have to use this term. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Oh yeah.
It's just so cool. So, I
see
mean,
that. Uh-huh.
I think just like with all this, like,
And exoplanets too. I mean, the solar system is cool, but it'll get saturated in the sense that you kind of run it because you're gonna have to start looking at other stars that actually have planets around it.
well, I think when we
did
get
they
there,
get discovered? I mean, it's like when did this exoplanet? That's the whole idea.
Wait,
I
you
told you
didn't
about the
even-
2 and 69.
yeah.
And then over time,
5,000.
over time they've been adding more and more, and it's been fanning out. They're getting more and more
Wait,
discovered.
You didn't
all
even
through
talk about.
tests.
You didn't even talk about James Webb.
Well,
You
yeah,
didn't even mention that you worked on James Webb. What?
Well, no, that's not actually true. I never
thought you did.
No, I know people that did. No, James Webb is out of Goddard. I myself did not.
Oh, you didn't. I thought
No,
you did.
I did
Oh.
not work on Hubble either, unfortunately. But no, I worked on Landsat. I worked on JPSS, Space Lab.
Space Lab,
Yeah,
right?
Space
that was
Lab
the
was,
cool
was
one.
good because it was a shuttle thing, and there was astronomy there. I supported the Astro 1
Yeah.
mission there, and the BBXRT was part of that. That was cool. It was cool because the astronomer slash astronaut. I think you met him, Ron Parise.
I did meet him. I remember
Yeah,
that.
Ron
Yeah, I remember
Parisi
you were
was
like,
there.
he's an astronaut.
Yeah,
I
he was
like,
there.
Oh,
It was
okay.
that's right. It was Goddard Open House Day. He was
Yeah,
there.
no, I remember that.
Yeah, Ron Parisi. Yeah,
That's
he was
so
there.
funny.
Yeah, he was there in his uniform and all. It was good.
It's
In
so
his
funny because like
spacesuit.
my experience of like you working at NASA is just like sitting in like a cold cubicle, like
Yeah.
playing with like dry erase markers.
I know people ask me, "Are you an astronaut?" It's like, well,
No, but what's funny is just like it's just like we just had a whole conversation with someone who was just so hyped to talk to you about it, And I
Right,
just think
right.
like it's so funny because it's like when you're this close to it, it obviously doesn't feel as like cool, but then like when you when you kind of like take a step back, it's like it is pretty awesome, you know, that like you get to work on this stuff. And I mean, like you're kind of playing it down. You're like, oh, I haven't worked on like the coolest stuff. It's like, no, it's cool. It's like it's still NASA.
No,
I was
saying
like,
how
JPL
JPL does all the cool missions and
no.
Yeah.
I think
Goddard
JPL
does
has
cool
the
things.
notable missions, but like just because they're notable doesn't mean that they aren't cool. I mean,
like you're saying, the JWST was a very cool mission. Is ongoing. Is a very cool mission.
Very grateful for those images. Thank God they're open source.
Yeah, that is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Great. I did, as you know, I did go to the stamp. What was it? They made a JWST stamp.
Oh God, don't talk about stamps.
Don't talk about stamps.
You're gonna lecture me about not making a stamp.
Oh.
You need to make a stamp. Like every time we talk, it's just you need to make a stamp.
So you don't want to talk about JWST, my experience because of that?
No.
I wasn't even going to go there. I really wasn't.
It's so funny. No, I just think when it comes to like the planets and the exoplanets, it's like I would love to make art with like exoplanets.
Yeah.
But I would need like the images of them. I need to know what they look like. You know, for me, I'm like so big about like things looking somewhat realistic.
The problem with that is it's practical. Is that we see them out there. We have an idea of what's there. I mean, you've heard of like the Goldilocks zone. Yeah. Okay, so an Earth-like planet.
Just right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Not too big, not too small. The temperature's there.
It's just right for human life.
Well, the whole
aren't they saying that Proxima, like Alpha Centauri C, could be that planet?
Liquid water is the signature.
Right.
You have to find liquid water.
I guess the question for you is, do you think that that's out there?
Liquid water,
or just like a planet that's in the Goldilocks zone?
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to venture to guess of the number. They kind of, but we've already labeled several. I mean, there's several.
Do you think there's like human type people on
Well, that's even more of a stretch in the sense that, I mean, if you listen to Carl Sagan or Neil deGrasse Tyson, Cosmos.
I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's too pessimistic.
Carl Sagan. Well, then listen to Carl Sagan. I like both of them, so I'm not going to say. The whole idea of finding life is and human life. That's the issue.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, the happenstance of them having exactly like vertebrae, invertebrate, Earth-like is probably too. The probability is too variable to try to determine what life would look like as humanoid. That's
That's how people ask me that question a lot, obviously, because like my work is so like celestial, and they're like, "Do you think there are aliens?" And I'm like, "I don't think they're green."
Yeah, right.
I don't think that. Like personally, but
well, I get the question too about aliens on Earth. So
like the Miami thing.
Yeah, everything. There's a lot of people asking me because I work for NASA.
Right.
When I think about UFOs and stuff like that, and
are those like, conspiracy theorists with like the UFOs?
My answer typically is we have never found anything that we can't explain is possibly coming from humans. Right?
Okay.
That nothing definitive that is from alien origin. Nothing definitive from
That's
alien
how I
origin.
feel about like it's like the Loch Ness monster thing. Everyone thought it was a monster. It turns out it's just a whale.
Yeah.
It's just a shitty picture of a whale.
There was even a little mock-up thing where a guy put out a little like a duck, like a rubber duck he made to look like
the Loch Ness monster. Oh, like a sea creature?
Yeah, but it's a teeny little duck. I mean, it wasn't even that big. It was put out there. It was a pure hoax. I mean,
I see. Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, I feel like aliens and the concept of them, it's cool. Like, I love thinking about it.
No, the
like,
idea of aliens
is
good.
Yeah,
sci-fi, come on, sci-fi.
I mean, you're a huge sci-fi. I know that.
Yeah,
like, huge sci-fi fan.
Are you a sci-fi fan?
I read Dune. Dune. I liked it by the time I got to like the end of it.
Right.
I thought I don't love the way like Frank Herbert writes. I think you are more of a sci-fi person than I am. I mean, you probably read. I probably read just as much as you do at this point. I mean, I swear to God, when I was a kid, I would just walk in his bedroom and he would just be like asleep with a book, just like all the time. You're always like you're sleeping in a book somewhere.
You were brought up to read.
No, and it's great. I have a goal this year to read 50 books. Yeah, and I've read 26 or 27 so far.
So you're on a good pace.
I read about 3 at a time, so it's like I'll like rotate between. I usually have like a fiction, a nonfiction, and then one before bed. That's typically how I'll read, and like it's nice and like I enjoy it. I feel like, sci-fi, it just depends on what it is for me, because like I do find it interesting, but I'm more interested, I mean, and this is obvious once I say it. I'm more interested in the book covers.
Real, oh,
I just think they look cool. You know what I mean? Like, well, I'm just so into, like, what's his name? That guy. Oh my God, don't tell me. Shelley Bonstall.
Oh, Chesney Bonstall.
I'm so much more into his like art than I am into like anything else. So it's just like
he definitely. I showed you that early.
Oh, I love. And that's the thing is like people are like, who are your inspirations? I'm like that. That's my inspiration.
I hear you. And that's not sci-fi. He was he did art, right?
Yeah.
He did art similar to a lot of your.
Oh, I don't say similar to me. I'm similar to him.
Right. Agreed.
For sure, which is fine. I mean, that's what is that quote? It's like, I stand on the shoulders of giants. Like, that's how I feel about him. It's like if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have found the inspiration that I did.
Yeah. I read something about him where he actually did the original drawings of the Golden Gate Bridge.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so he was. Yeah. I didn't know. I kind of after we talked about him.
Yeah.
I kind of delved in his life a little bit. Fascinating guy. I could see where definitely you got inspired by.
Hugely inspired. I mean, and just even sci-fi books, like the covers of them, I find inspirational.
Okay.
There's like a part of me that thinks I'm like some reincarnate of like someone who was like a socialite in like the 70s and 80s, and that was like the art that I collected or something.
I see.
Like I literally do, because I'm just like I'm so into it, and it's just
right.
when I don't get the compliment often, but when I do from like a Gen X like boomer, they're like, oh, this reminds me of like sci-fi like 80s 70s like sci-fi art. I'm like, I am so grateful you said that.
Well, there's
because that's the stuff that I like.
Record albums. What was that? Dean was the guy. Dean.
Well, I mean what is that? The Metallica album cover? That one's like one of my favorites.
I was thinking Uriah Heep, Magician's Birthday. It's a fascinating cover. It's if you get a chance to take a look at it.
Yeah.
It's pretty. The colors remind me a lot of what your art looks like.
Well, speaking of
so
my
I think the guy is Dean. I don't remember his first name. But anyway, it's
can I show you? Well, you looked at a piece.
Okay.
You looked at a piece.
Yeah,
and you looked through the collection, which has not gone live.
Gotcha.
And you picked out a favorite.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I had more than one.
You had more than one. I know, but you whittled it down.
Yeah. Okay. Just like
so. This ended up being your favorite.
Yeah.
This one ended up being your favorite.
Well, I'll tell you why.
Why was this your favorite?
I love the mountain aspect of it and the waterway underneath. Okay, the terrestrial aspect of this is fascinating, but the green too pops. But obviously, recently we saw the total eclipse.
That is the photo from the eclipse,
and that you took that photo.
And
I knew that I had to pick that because we shared that experience.
We did, yeah.
And that to me meant a lot. That's why I'm connected to this piece.
Do you want to know what's even cooler about this piece?
What's that?
So the mountain is actually from an oil painting.
Okay.
And his mom is like a classically trained oil painter.
Right.
Which I think makes it even cooler.
Yeah,
deepens the lore a little bit because it's like it's pulling something from something you were inspired by.
Right.
That you inspired me with. That then this is the piece that ended up coming from that. And what's cool about this one, I mean, right now for me, I'm really into like bogs. I think they're really fascinating. It's like it's so weird. I like grew up in a swamp, and now I'm fascinated with bogs.
Gotcha.
Like, how did that happen? I love the desert. I love living here, but I'm like, I want to like step in a bog, and it's just like,
yeah.
How did this happen? So I've been really exploring. Like, I want to like go to what is it called? Oh, what is that country? It's not Romania. There's like a part of like
Europe?
Estonia.
Oh, Estonia,
has a lot
part of the Balkans.
Beautiful bogs
Huh.
in Estonia, and I like really want to go and like shoot them. I feel like that would be really awesome.
There you go.
But yeah, this piece to me is it's interesting that you picked this one because
I like the green too. The color is extremely.
That's in Pisces. That's what that means. So that's the color for Pisces. So what I did for this project is the sky for all of them were what the date fell on. There's a constellation that the sun goes through, right?
Right.
So
it's
like,
part of the zodiac.
It's part of the zodiac, but it's also just like the constellations.
Right.
And I pulled actually constellations that weren't necessarily just in the zodiac.
Right.
So I have Ophiuchus in here.
Okay.
And I have Cetans and Sextans.
Nice. Okay. Those are like obscure. A lot of people don't know about.
No, they don't.
They touch though, right?
They do.
But they're not part. Yeah,
no, they don't.
That's
technically,
good
Ophiuchus always will fall into Sagittarius.
Right.
So people who were born in Ophiuchus are technically Sagittarius, but they could be Ophiuchus. So I wanted to pull that in there because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
But the thing that I did that I love that I haven't really explored like telling anyone about yet is Cetans it only comes into contact with the sun for 1 day a year. So what I did for this project
What day is that?
I don't know what it's a different day every year.
Is it?
But it's only one day.
I thought it would be the same day. I don't know.
I don't think it might not. It might be. I don't know.
think
I
so.
just know it's one day.
Yeah, I think it
and
would
I
be.
have.
You know what? Let me look it up. You got my curiosity.
No, it's interesting.
C10s that actually touches the sun.
It's one day.
Okay.
And what I did for the project is I only have one. Okay. I did it on purpose to
cool.
honor it. The fact that it's so scarce, I wanted it to be just as specific. And then like sextants, it's similar, but there's a little bit less of that one. But yeah, this one's Pisces. And then there's I used all the 12 obviously that are like the ones you would know. So there's 15 total. Gotcha. So there's Ophiuchus, sextants, and then C10s, including the ones.
Choice. Okay.
Yeah, because I wanted to like include more celestial bodies than just what people know. Because I really didn't want this project to feel like astrology.
Right.
I didn't want people to think that this was like me creating like some sort of
You're the astronomer's daughter, not the astrologer's
Exactly. And I don't dislike astrology.
Right.
But this I wanted.
With a grain of salt. It's fun.
I mean, well, the thing that I think about astrology is like as complex as we are human is as complex astrology is.
Yeah.
And like you can't just look at someone and be like, oh, you're a Leo, of course. It's just like that's so one-sided. That's like just a judgment, But it's like
you're breaking people down into 12 categories.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's so much more that like people are. And what I find, I mean, every time I think about astrology, my mind just goes back to astronomy. Like that's really how it is. Where I'm like, this is so cool.
I taught you well.
No, you did. And I think that's like the thing that I find fascinating is just like, there is so much to explore with like with the planets and everything. And what I find so interesting is like it all just works perfectly.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are things that go wrong. Like there's the, like foreign object that just kind of floated through and looked like a cigar. And
but that makes it fascinating.
It is, but it's just like to me, like the thing that's so interesting about space, and I think part of the reason I just keep going back to it and back to it and back to it is the fact that like how could this all exist in such a perfect way?
Right.
You know what I mean? And just work. Like I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I admire it. I'm grateful for it. I think it's really cool.
Right.
And I think like, I mean, the love for the moon has kind of shifted, right? Because like now it used to be really just like I thought it looked cool.
Right.
But now it's like it represents like perspective, right? Because every day, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in space. It's a full moon. Yeah. The moon is always full.
Right.
But the way you see it depends on perspective. So I use the moon as a reminder that like your perspective will always be different from someone else's.
Right.
You will always have a different perspective. Perspective is a lens. It's not a mirror. And it's like really important to remember that everyone has their own side of a story. Everyone has their own life experience. Right. And the moon like represents that for me,
Yeah, so like you have a lot of moon stuff in your art, which is great.
Yeah.
And for me, the solar eclipse, I have new appreciation for the moon because it's compared to the size of the sun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the sun, 860,000 miles across, and the moon
it's like
is
incomprehensible.
2,000, right?
Yeah.
And just the juxtaposition of them with respect to the Earth, they're relatively the same size, like a half a degree, which is a fascinating thing that we a lot take for granted, but that is a special thing for we to understand.
The distance.
And how an eclipse will be an annular one where the moon is smaller and there's a ring that the sun's bigger out.
Oh,
and then reversed with the total.
I have lunar eclipses in here, and they're cool because they're like I did it where it's like a red moon, obviously, because the sun's behind it.
Right.
But I put like an orange halo around it to really kind of signify like the sun is behind this.
Yeah.
It's actually funny. I thought the piece you were going to choose was one of the lunar eclipse ones.
Lunar eclipse
because it had a yellow.
That was
sky.
one of the that was one of the other ones. That
probably was the one I was thinking.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
It was definitely one of the others. But you said I had to pick one.
Actually, I know you had to pick one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was one of the four. The lunar eclipse was definitely one of the four.
That's so cool. I mean, I've seen a lunar eclipse. I tried pretty unsuccessfully to take. Actually, no, that's not true. I took some photos of it, but they weren't like the best photos.
Right.
The next time it comes around, I will be better prepared. But it's just like it's such a cool thing to see in the sky, and I just like. I don't know. Again, it's just like I have this weird thing with the moon. It's like my mom and the moon are the only two things that I can just be looking around at random and just lock eyes with.
Right.
That's it.
Wow.
It's just it's mom and it's the moon.
And the moon. Wow.
It's it. And it's just like I'll just be looking up and I'll just realize, oh, I'm looking at the moon right now. Like that's really cool, And it just to me the moon is just like so special, like because of that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you picked this one. I feel like it's really cool. This is I don't know exactly what day it is, but it's sometime in March before the spring equinox.
Uh-huh.
That's what that like landscape represents.
Okay.
And it's a day in Pisces that there was a total solar eclipse.
Okay.
So,
I like
yeah.
it. Very cool.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
I think like the boring part of this, I hope this isn't boring, but yeah, this project is going to go live sometime in like mid-June.
Okay.
Thinking like, my idea is it'll like pre-sell a little bit, and then all the art will, all the like, the whole like full like time that it'll be available, like the public,
Right.
will be on the summer solstice, longest day of the year,
Okay.
and then all the art will reveal the day after. So it's like once we've hit summer, all the
Right.
art will reveal, which I think is
got
kind
you.
of cool.
Perfect
So
timing. That's good.
yeah, I wanted to plan it around. I mean, since it so heavily used the solar calendar, I wanted
Right.
to plan it around that. Wait, one thing.
Yes.
This will be the last thing I ask you.
No, no worries.
Because I think this is
I'm
interesting.
here.
No, I know, but I mean, the thing that I find interesting. Did you know? This is like a conspiracy theory of mine.
Okay.
If you divide 365
Right.
by 28, what do you get? Short answer, 13. Why
28.
28?
Oh, okay.
13.
13.
How many days is a moon like cycle?
29 and some change.
But imagine if we had 13 months and they were all 28 days long.
Oh,
why? Like, it's just.
The problem with that,
What's the problem? Tell me.
Trying to divide even numbers into solar and lunar cycles got us in trouble hundreds of years ago. I mean, the Phoenicians did 360 by 12 and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And eventually, what happens, and they had to change the calendar, right? I mean, it got to the point where, and I work with this in a lot of my work at Goddard, is leap years, right? You're dealing
Feels
with the 29th.
so stupid.
Well, it's necessary.
Is it still?
Yeah. The
Okay.
whole leap seconds, maybe not. They're trying to get rid of leap seconds. That's a different thing. The whole idea of keeping the calendar straight by synchronizing the number of days per month is based upon it's the fact that things aren't perfectly add up, or
Okay.
the number is, it's always going to be a fraction of, there's an error. It's in engineering. It's
Do you think that has to
it's
do with the fact that like we
precision
don't
errors.
perceive time the way that it could be perceived?
No, it has to do with the thing about it is the orbit of the moon is actually, it's going away. It's getting longer. We're dealing with physical objects in the real world.
Yeah.
You can't mathematically order them in a way that is just the way you want to.
I like that.
You've got to adapt to
There's a
the
lesson
way
in
the
there.
real.
There's
is
a
a
lesson
huge
in
lesson
there.
Well, everybody thinks every 4 years we got to add one day to the calendar. There's a corollary to that.
Yeah.
Actually, over 400 years, you're going to have too much. You have to compensate the other way.
Huh.
You have to drop 3 days out. So
Interesting.
in 400 years, you need 97, not 100.
So what are we gonna call it?
Well,
Like
they drop. No, it's already it's well
leap
known.
year? Like what is it gonna be called
it's
instead?
on every. If I'm going to get, I don't want to screw this up. Every 100th year that isn't divisible by 400 isn't a leap year. So what that means is that 1600 was a leap year.
Yeah.
17, 18, and 19, those are the three, weren't. 2000 was. So we just had it, and everybody thinks it's part of the four. But they didn't know that 1900, 1800, 1700 weren't. 2100 will not be a leap year.
So they won't need a leap year.
They won't. That's how they drop it out.
So you grew up without a leap year. That's so cool.
Again, 97 of them we need 97 of them in a 100-year period,
I didn't
not
know that.
100 of that.
That's so cool.
So we drop out 3.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
I have algorithms that actually do this kind of thing. JPL's well known. I think somebody actually. Well, wait a minute. How long does it get to the point where that doesn't work and you need to actually add one in?
That's what I'm saying.
32,000.
It's just not perfect.
I think it's 3,200 or something like that.
I love it.
Anyway,
well, do you have any like closing questions for me or anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. What with the exoplanets thing? I really want to explore that, a little bit. And also doing things that aren't terrestrial with the celestial. In other words,
I had a project planned like that last year that I didn't end up doing.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious where
I had a whole thing planned where I wanted to like create basically like a 3D like world.
Okay.
That was like you travel to the planets, and then it was like a 360 like like basically like space of what I wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
Then I realized I would have to learn like Blender to do that, and I was like, I will bookmark this idea for when I have
okay.
better skills in 3D art.
Okay.
So that's still in the in the tank, but it just needs some time to simmer.
Gotcha.
Because I don't want to pay someone to do that, because I feel like it's like that's too much of my own thing. Like I'd rather do that myself, you know.
Right.
So I had this whole idea where it's like you would travel to like a planet and it would like become my own thing.
Wow.
But yeah, I like the idea of Earth. I love the idea of like, because the way my art is supposed to feel is like you are standing there.
Right.
That's the way it's supposed to feel. You are standing there. It is you. You are the main character.
Gotcha.
You are looking at it, and you can't just be floating in space.
Well, if you're in a spacecraft.
You could, yeah, if you're in a spacecraft, you know, but like the whole idea is like you're either submerged in water or you are standing somewhere, and it's like your physical being in some way, shape, or form is like present in some environment.
Gotcha.
And to me, like that's like a huge part of it.
Gotcha.
I mean,
well, you mentioned about underwater. What about, how about surreal ocean art?
I've done it. You just have to look at it.
Wait a minute. Okay, wait.
No.
No.
You've seen it.
The jellyfish?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all like
The
underwater.
that's true.
Yeah.
The jelly. Okay.
From like scuba diving stuff. Okay. Do you have anything else?
Jelly.
Any other questions?
Not really. I think we covered a lot.
I think we did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
appreciate
know
it.
I'm going to think of something.
We
but
have
right
plenty
off the
of
top of my
time.
head, yeah, we do. And this is great.
They don't have time with us, but we have time together.
Gotcha.
You know?
Understood.